Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show here on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I've got some really funny stuff going on right now because apparently, my audio-only output is not connecting. So I'm going to have to post this one later. Okay, so I don't know if anybody's heard. Well, I'm sure everybody has because I know how this goes. But the balloon that ironically made its way all the way across the United States for the most part. I got something on that. I'll show you a little bit later on. But it finally got out to the ocean where they felt safe enough to go ahead and shoot it down. So Biden is now fighting inflation. Inflation of balloons, anyway. Also, I don't know if you heard, but you also, I don't know if you also heard, but there was another balloon that was suspected to be a Chinese spy balloon that was going across South America as well. So, yeah. Anyway, I would like to give a shout out to all of my brand new folks that are coming on and heading on over. They're popping into Rumble. I see a couple over on Facebook. Thank you all for joining. I also know that there's some new members, new people who have signed up in Rumble, have subscribed in Rumble. My number is now at 476. I'm a little short, just a little bit short of my 10,000 my 10,000 subscriber goal for 2023. Ironically, on that point, I went through and did an evaluation yesterday, and I said, okay, how many days are left? And as of yesterday, it was 331. So I went and took 331, took 10,000, divided it by 331. So I have to average somewhere around 28 to 29 new subscribers on Rumble every single day between now and the end of the year in order to reach my 10,000 subscriber goal. And of course, that's going to change the more days that go on. So if you haven't subscribed, please send on over to Rumble, go on over to Rumble, sign up, and subscribe because that is really going to help me, and I do appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. Okay, so much. Now, obviously, that's a very lofty goal, I think, but you know what? I was challenged by my partner in the True Grit Roots Network to make it a big goal, and so that's what I'm doing. I do know that my primary outlaw, outlet, not outlaw, I'm going to refer to you. I'm going to talk about you in just a second. My primary outlet for advertising is through social media, and I have been pushing a really big campaign on Twitter in particular, and I've had a lot of new followers on Twitter. So if you're watching me on Twitter and you're following me on Twitter, please head on over to Rumble and help me out over here and sign up for an account. Of course, the free speech alternative to YouTube, and it is free. It is free to sign up. It is free to subscribe. So do me a favor and do that. I would really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow and expand and do all kinds of things with this channel, and this is just absolutely awesome. So I see that Outlaw Dogs had a family member who has passed. We do send our condolences your way, Outlaw Dogs over on Rumble. We obviously from all of us here in the Whiskey Musings realm and family, we do send our condolences your direction, in your family's direction for sure. That is kind of sad to hear, but unfortunately it is a fact of life. Even when they're taken early, it is it's always a shock, but it unfortunately it is just a literal fact of life, and I know that doesn't necessarily help the pain any, but anyway. All right. So, enough with that. So let me go ahead and get this going. Let me see. Which one? It's this one here. All right. So tonight is sponsored, affiliated by the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content and to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process, of course. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. It's an awesome little book. It is the entire Constitution. It comes in a 1/8 or so, roughly, of Saddleback leather. It has water-resistant pages in here, and look at that stitching on the binding. It goes all the way through. It has a 100-year guarantee against defects in materials and workmanship. This is a great keepsake to pass around to your kids and your grandkids. I know of one kid in particular. He's a 12-year-old young man who basically has got this for an early Christmas present, and he's actually going to use this to gain some merit badges in the Boy Scouts, I'm imagining. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, somewhere around in there. I can't remember where 12-year-old falls for it. But you can get this by going to constitution.whiskeymusings.online, and of course the proceeds from the purchase of this goes directly to the show here. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate all of your guys' support, as well as the support from the Institute on the Constitution to come and allow me to be an affiliate for this. So this is absolutely awesome. All right, now let's talk about the wonderful... Oh, wait. Before I get going on that, I've got 2 things. Geez, I forgot already. I've got 2 things to do here. First of all, I am drinking my small batch 4 Roses tonight. That is the Kentucky bourbon whiskey. Let's see. Yeah, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. And of course, as always, I am drinking it straight in the glass, a chilled glass, with my whiskey stones in there. And they are actual stones. I did see somebody made a comment on my Facebook page when I shared out a thing about American Badass whiskey, which I'm hoping my bottle will be coming soon. But they had talked about the metal stones versus the actual stones, and I have the actual stones. So that's what's here. And I also have stones, because obviously I'm talking about all kinds of things on this program that I probably should be or shouldn't be, at least according to all of our wonderful censors. Anyway. Good stuff. All right. So I've got that out of the way. Now we come to our next segment, which of course happens every single Saturday, and that is On This Day in American History. And, of course, on this day in American history, we read from the American Patriots Almanac. This is an absolutely fabulous book. It's by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. I do not get anything off of this book, by the way. You could just go and buy it at any bookstore, anywhere it's available. It is a compilation of a bunch of stories about our America and her historical founding. And, of course, I read it every Saturday night. And so tonight's date, February 4th, talks about Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born a slave near Easton, Maryland in February 1818. The exact date is uncertain. A story from his youth sums up his courage in many ways. When he was 16 years old, his master hired him out to a farmer named Edward Covey, who had a reputation for cruelty to slaves. Covey often whipped his new field hand until Douglass was, in his own words, broken in body, soul, and spirit. One day, Covey began to tie Douglass with a rope, intending to beat him again. At this moment, from whence came the spirit, I don't know. I resolved to fight. Douglass later recalled. He grabbed Covey by the throat and held off his blows. The two men fell to wrestling and rolling in a barnyard until finally Covey quit. Striking a white man could bring severe punishment, but Covey told no one of the fight. He did not want people to know he could not control a 16-year-old slave. He never tried to whip the boy again. My long-crushed spirit rose, Douglass remembered. The day had passed forever when I could be a slave. Douglass eventually escaped to the North, where he became one of the nation's most eloquent voices, decrying the evils of slavery. After the Civil War, he continued to write and speak for the rights of Black Americans. Though often a fiery critic of his country, he also was a patriot who was determined to make it a better place. No nation was ever called to the contemplation of a destiny more important and solemn than ours, he wrote. He spent his life working for an America that offered justice for all men, justice now and always, justice without reservation or qualification, except those suggested by mercy and love. And that is today's On This Day in American History, the day when Frederick Douglass fought back. All right. Speaking of fighting back, or lack thereof, Joe Biden finally decided to take down the Chinese spy balloon that has been flying across our country for the last several days. Now, the interesting thing about this is that he actually talked about this, and he stated it today during a press conference. He told reporters earlier today, that the United States would, quote unquote, take care of the Chinese spy balloon that was being monitored by the Pentagon. And he was basically asked if the U.S. government was going to shoot down the balloon, and Biden said, we'll take care of it, but did not elaborate on what steps would be taken next, according to Fox News. The comment broke the president's silence on a topic that had captured the attention of millions. And it was capturing the attention of millions, of course, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody has seen some of the memes that have been running around, but there was one in particular there were a couple that I caught. One in particular had a thing written in red saying, Eric, happy Valentine's Day, love you, Fang Fang. And then there was another one that had the that basically had the Trump flag on there that's saying Trump won. Yeah, it's just, this whole thing captured and enamored a lot of people. And it really did for me also, because first of all, it was kind of odd that the Chinese decided to use that as a form of spy. But again, Yeah, I don't know. There was so much discussion about this. And so I decided tonight, a lot of tonight is going to be discussing a little bit about this. So Biden finally grew some cojones, let's just say, and has been and finally said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and shoot this thing down. Well, earlier this afternoon, Eastern time, okay, they went ahead and issued. So the FAA issued a shutdown of airspace near the Atlantic amid reports of a plan to shoot down the Chinese spy balloon. Now, they basically were considering shooting it as soon as it moved offshore into the Atlantic. And a senior U.S. official told Fox News about the plan on Saturday after ABC News reported on Friday that a similar plan was being considered. And the FAA issued a ground stop and airspace clearance for parts of North Carolina, South Carolina for operations at Charleston, Myrtle Beach, and Wilmington, which were paused for national security initiatives just after 1 p.m. Eastern time, and on today, basically. So anybody that might have gotten caught in that, and you might be, watching this program or whatever, this is why. Okay, if they didn't tell you anything, all right. So apparently the FAA went ahead and did this shutdown and everything else. And in fact, let me go ahead and shut this off. So the military did actually shoot it down. I have some footage here you can see this. This is basically footage of the balloon as it's falling after being shot down. Now, the thing about it is it was shot down with an F-22 Raptor, and it fired a A-9X air-to-air missile at the thing. And reportedly, after it was shot down, there were actually several military vessels out in the ocean that were essentially looking to try and recover the thing after it splashed down. Anyway, so they caught it apparently at about 58,000 feet. Then, so a single AX missile was fired. Oop, let me do this so you guys can watch. You can see in the image, in the video, the balloon is like right in the middle. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but this was off of Surfside Beach, South Carolina, just off of Surfside Beach, where they decided to bring this thing down. So anyway, I'll stop the video there. This is an actual image of the balloon, and it apparently was higher, at the time in Kingston, above Kingston, North Carolina. It was actually higher at the time than, airline jets. And I've got a little bit more on that here in just a second, to discuss about that. But they apparently have been considering, the Pentagon has been saying, don't shoot it down, don't shoot it down. Biden reportedly wanted to do it on Wednesday, but the Pentagon was saying, don't do it because of the possible damage that could happen to people on the ground, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is that they've actually been tracking this thing for quite some time. And give me just a second. I want to make sure that my next article is, okay. So here, I just want to show you, this is an actual image here of the air escaping right after it had shot down. Apparently they had some clear blue skies over in the Atlantic for this. And this thing, it basically, they finally decided to shoot it down. Television footage were showing the balloon deflating before dropping toward the water at around 2:40 p.m. Eastern time. U.S. military jets were reportedly visible flying in the vicinity, and ships were obviously deployed in the water, preparing for the recovery operation. They're going to try and get a hold of this thing. Now, for those of you that may not have caught this, but they went and the Chinese issued a statement saying that it was a weather balloon, that it was used for atmospheric measurements, and that it was a civilian. They call it a civilian, but what you don't realize is the CCP owns everything over there, okay? So anything that they call civilian, it's automatically part of the CCP. There is no difference between civilian and military and government or organizations over there. They own everything, okay? They allow people to think that they own stuff. But anyway, so they they went ahead and they shot this thing down. The CCP is claiming that it's a weather balloon, which, by the way, breaking news by the Daily Wire. I don't have it up here, but the breaking news by the Daily Wire is that the CCP is basically saying that we are at fault for shooting down what was essentially a civilian balloon. I don't know how the hell that happened, but whatever. But anyway, honestly, I mean, again, I don't know, but I got something to show you here in just a second, coming up. And let me just say it's going to kind of be, it's interesting because I haven't seen anybody do this yet, but, anyway, so reportedly, and this is essentially that reportedly the balloon flew over Alaska and Canada on its way to the mainland. And, so I went ahead and just said, you know what? I'm going to try and do a small plot. I want to see where this thing was going. So I went ahead and did this in Google Earth. And let me go ahead and get this up to where I can actually see it, manipulate it. Hang on just a second. All right. So first of all, you'll notice in this diagram that I've got right over here, this corner right here, this very end piece right above my finger is Surfside Beach, South Carolina. Okay. Now, if you'll look further back, and I can't put my finger over there because obviously my arm just gets cut off. But further back, you can see right in the middle where Billings, Montana is, and Malmstrom Air Force Base. Now, take a look at that track. So now keep in mind, it probably didn't follow the direct line that you see on the map here. Okay. But the interesting thing about it is it was sighted in Billings on Wednesday. And one of the things about Malmstrom Air Force Base out here is that reportedly, according to the BBC, and actually the New York Times, reportedly Malmstrom Air Force Base is one of the 3 main areas that we have for all of our ICBM nuclear missiles, our intercontinental ballistic missiles. So it is sort of interesting, by the way, that the path would have taken across one of our Air Force bases. So this is sort of suspect. Now, I will say this much, okay? The thing apparently crossed into Washington. I wasn't even aware of this, but it crossed into Washington, then crossed back over into Canada, and then crossed back over into Montana right above Idaho, as you can see here. So again, it didn't necessarily come down the direct path, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of the general direction that it took. Now, this thing was seen in the Aleutian Islands. So let me go up here. Now, I don't know exactly where in the Aleutian Islands it crossed over, but I can tell you this much, that's a lot of water that it was over with. And I can also tell you this too. Our defense mechanism up in Alaska, starting with Eglin Air Force Base, not to mention the Coast Guard that's in the area, and so on and so forth. So, I'm going to be honest with you. There was no reason that I can see that if they knew that it was coming and it crossed the Aleutian Islands and it crossed into Canada, why didn't Canada shoot it down, as an example? We could have easily taken it out over the Pacific Ocean as it crossed along the Pacific Ocean here. Because I can't imagine that the thing really was, honestly, I can't imagine this thing was not tracked. Apparently, according to reports, NORAD has been tracking it for some time. And the Canadian Armed Forces announced on Thursday that it was working with its U.S. Counterparts to track the movements of the balloon, reflecting that its flight path crossed over its territory as well. Now, the funny thing about this thing is, realistically, I mean, what would be the point? So there's been a lot of speculation in terms of what would be the point of why the Chinese would be using a balloon. But I wanted to show you its path, and let me just get it back to where you guys can see the full thing. And yeah, right about there. So you can see the path that it was taking. Now, it supposedly was following the jet stream that was way up there. Again, it depends on where the jet stream was at the time that it was going. But it crossed a lot of open space in a lot of places where our military is. And if you recall, I had an episode not too long ago where I discussed how the Chinese were buying up land right outside of our military bases, ironically, in places like Montana and Wyoming. And that they were putting Huawei, because the article was directly about Huawei and being banned in the United States. They were putting in Huawei technology. Now, for those of you that may not have heard that episode, Huawei is a Chinese-owned telecommunications company. They have cell phones, cell towers, things like that. And one of the things that the article in particular that was talking about was the fact that the Huawei technology was such that it could, in theory, interfere with our intercontinental ballistic missile communications. So the communications that we would use in order to help the missiles to target and track and all that, Huawei technology was suspected of being potentially interfering with those communications in our silos. Well, now you have that article, and that happened 6 months ago, and now you have this thing coming across what is apparently one of our 3 fields of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Is this a coincidence? Well, I can tell you that coincidences, I don't know if I necessarily believe in them. I'm one of those types of people that believes that where there's smoke, there's fire. And right now things are smoking pretty damn good over China. As you know, watching this program, like last Wednesday's program, I basically was saying that China has been gearing up for war. So the chances that this thing actually is a civilian wayward weather balloon is kind of questionable. Now, the one thing that you'll notice, of course, is that they didn't shoot it down until they got to Surfside Beach. So Surfside Beach, obviously, until it passed. So as you can see, it went pretty much across the entire United States. To basically go across the U.S. and who knows what kinds of things it was gathering. Well, I actually did a search and I was asking myself that same question. And so one of the articles that I have for you tonight in the show notes, in the description of the video, this was talking about, okay, so this, all right, let me move on to this one. Why would China use a balloon to spy on America? Because a lot of people are like, hey, all he has to do, or all they have to do is, go and grab a satellite or something along those lines. Well, what a lot of people don't understand is that, first of all, to get a satellite into geosynchronous orbit, even to put a satellite into orbit itself, is prohibitively expensive when comparing to a balloon with some, equipment suspended below. Passive listening equipment, by the way. It doesn't even have to be active. The second thing is that had they launched a satellite, we would definitely have known that. and we would have been tracking it, and we would have realized what it was, once it got into geosynchronous orbit above us, above in the Earth's atmosphere. Another reason as to why they could send up this balloon is because of the fact that it would be closer to Earth than a satellite would be. And by doing that, by being closer to Earth, it would essentially, so it would essentially be able to listen in on things a lot easier, because as I work in wireless in my regular job, wireless does have a danger or a Achilles heel, let's say, in terms of what they call free space loss. As wireless signals pass through the free airspace, the air, the water that's involved, the molecules that are involved, the nitrogen, the oxygen, etc., they tend to slow down or attenuate those signals. And so you would end up having, very much a small amount of information going through the air. So realistically, having a satellite up there, the transmitter would have to be pretty dang powerful. Now, they could be listening in on things like cellular frequencies and cellular RF. They could be listening in on, point-to-point links or things like that. There's a lot of possibilities as to what they could be listening into. And unfortunately, they would have to be, relatively closer than what a satellite would give them. And so that's why one of these balloons is actually a pretty decent vehicle in order to do that, in terms of especially running it across our military bases and those kinds of things. So the degradation of the signal or the attenuation of the signal can definitely have a problem. And of course, obviously, it has to travel through our ionosphere to get out into space to where the satellites can actually hear it and pick it up. So there's a lot of advantages to using a balloon, not to mention the fact that a balloon, for the most part, can hang over top something for a much longer time than a satellite that is not in geosynchronous orbit can. So as you saw with all of the pictures and everything else, it held over Billings, Montana, in that area for probably at least a day, 24 hours, before moving on. And so, again, having the balloon, it moves at a much slower pace. It apparently was potentially driven by some sort of motor or something on there to help it hang. And in a particular area for quite some time before it moved on, long enough for people to actually notice within the sky that there was something up there. And so it's closer to the ground again, so it can pick up more signals, more stuff that it can listen to passively. It's cheaper, and it's also not moving quite as fast as other methodologies might be. Okay. Now, balloons themselves, honestly, even large size balloons, have a low radar signature, and they also have low emissions, because of the fact with the low radar emissions, if all it's doing is passively listening and not actually transmitting to anything, there's no signature, there's no signal signature for anybody to be able to pick up on. And so, yeah, it's, again, it's a perfect device to be able to do this within that space. Okay. Now, the military has been using balloons for quite some time. They've been using them since the late 18th century. In 1794, the French created a actual balloon corps to help them do reconnaissance during the French Revolutionary War. The American Civil War had them. The Union Army employed a number of balloons in that same kind of role. In fact, the two largest, the Intrepid and the Union, each had a capacity of 32,000 cubic feet of lifting gas, which, was hydrogen back then probably. But actually it was supplied by special hydrogen generating inflation wagons. And so, balloons have been used quite a bit. So anyway, they've been used throughout history and everything else. So I wanted to take a look and go, you know what? Let's just take a look at this thing and see what it looks like. Now, thankfully, the BBC went ahead and made this graphic, so I have to thank them for this. But high-altitude surveillance balloons are basically helium-filled now because we know hydrogen is very, very flammable, etc. But the hydrogen balloon, and then you have solar panels that to provide the power to the device, and then instruments can be put in, including cameras, radar, sensors, communications equipment, antennas, etc., etc. Now, how high do they fly? Well, according to the BBC here, surveillance balloons generally run between 80,000 and 120,000 feet up in the air. Now, fighter aircraft usually have a top end limit of right around 65,000 feet. And commercial airliners run anywhere from 30 to 40,000 feet in the air, which most people, when you're listening, you can hear the airline or the pilot say, we've reached our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet, or we've reached our cruising altitude of 38,000 feet, whatever it happens to be. So this balloon was actually higher up than like commercial airliners and stuff. And reportedly, there were several pilots that were saying as they were flying, they were like, hey, we can see this thing. We see what it is. And so, again, it's below the upper layers of the atmosphere where degradation of signals can occur. But in this particular case, it's higher than either what we can reach or where we can actually, have commercial airliners and things like that flying through. Now, one thing that is interesting about this as well, in terms of the balloon by itself, is that the Biden administration actually knew about this thing, and they knew that it had entered our airspace on January 28th. So why did the Biden administration not tell everybody about it? Well, they actually knew for nearly a week before the news of it actually broke. So the Biden administration actually knew about it, but didn't tell anybody. And so the question is, well, why? Why would you do that? Well, it's pretty simple. According to the Post-Millennial, the Biden admin stayed quiet on the Chinese spy balloon to not disrupt the Blinken-Xi meeting. So I don't know if you guys recall, but Blinken was about ready to take a trip over to China in an attempt to try and establish better relations between us and China in this particular case. Well, the Chinese spy balloon showed up, and when it showed up and crossed the Aleutian Islands, I would hazard a guess that they probably were like, you know what? We don't want anything, to disrupt this communication with Blinken and Xi. Well, then it became public knowledge that the thing came out, and all of a sudden the Blinken Beijing trip got postponed. Oh my gosh. So again, guys, you cannot trust the Chinese. You just can't. You cannot trust the Chinese on any of this stuff. I mean, did COVID not teach anybody anything about trusting the Chinese? They sat on it for nearly a month. They sat on the distribution of COVID for nearly a month, did nothing because they reportedly knew about it back in November. We didn't hear about it until December, and our country didn't actually start doing anything until January. So anyway, the point is you cannot trust anything those people are trying to tell us. They wouldn't even tell us anything about it. So, yeah. So they just went ahead and canceled or postponed the Beijing trip due to this balloon. And supposedly the U.S. is, quote, committed to maintaining open lines with China at all times, including during this incident, according to a senior State Department official. And then that same official added that Blinken planned to make the trip at the earliest opportunity when conditions allow. Yeah, so major issues were already on it. And then this just sort of thing, I guess, was taking the cake, this particular thing on the trip. Well, this is not going to be the end of this situation. And let me explain why. Because one of the, we'll call them America First senators, Josh Hawley, has now called for an investigation into the Biden response to the Chinese balloon. So Josh Hawley, who, you guys may have seen him on some of his, some of the things that he has gone after, some of the committees he's been on, the questions he asks. He is a very well-educated debater, I'm going to say. And an interrogator of certain people. And he's actually impressed me quite a bit in comparison to several of the other congressmen. But in this particular case, he's now calling for an investigation into the Biden response to the Chinese spy balloon. And he's not the only one, because there is another one, and I can't think of her name right now, but she also is calling for a investigation into this. And yes, Music Man, I do mean non-response to his non-response for doing this. So yeah, I mean, this is not going to go away. We're going to hear about it. We're going to hear about it probably multiple times, in the near future, to discuss about what the heck happened out there. Now, one of the questions that came out had to deal with, first of all, how could we bring this thing down? And, anybody who has had a balloon, especially one that's filled with helium, you do know that helium tends to slide or slip out of a balloon. And over time, even with the Mylar balloons that you get at the store for like birthdays and things like that, it tends to release that gas into the atmosphere, even if it's sealed up, because apparently the gas itself can, slip through the seams and the cracks. Well, one of the ideas that I had was, I was like, well, why can't they just, put a couple of holes in it and let it gradually descend to Earth? Because, of course, one of the biggest problems that they had, or one of the biggest reasons why they said they did nothing, was the fact that they wanted to avoid civilian casualties on the ground. And so I'm sitting here thinking, why can't you try and do more of a controlled descent for this thing, rather than just like blow it out of the sky, but control the descent and drop it down? And I'm not the only one that has that question. In fact, there was a aerospace specialist, and this is according to the Epoch Times. There was a aerospace specialist who basically said that the U.S. could use a laser to force it down. Now, think about that for a second. They could have used a laser to burn a hole into the balloon and start allowing it to release its helium gas and bring it down slowly. So yeah, I mean, this is this is one of those things that this guy, Art Thompson, he's the CEO of Sage Cheshire and president of A2ZFX. He stands in front of 2 module capsules that he built for a project, I guess, called Red Bull Stratus. And essentially, he was saying that, and he's the CEO of this California-based company, which provides stratospheric balloon launching and research services. He actually believed that a semi-controlled descent could be a solution. He was previously the technical director of the Red Bull Stratos program, which in 2012 smashed records for the highest ever skydive, an endeavor that included the world's largest manned balloon. So he was saying that firing a munition or a laser weapon, one can put holes in the balloon and force it to vent air. And yeah, so I mean, again, it's like, this is one of those things that, again, the intelligence, let's see, what does he say here? He says, knowing what the weather patterns are, you could probably predict how fast you can get it to vent, in which case it's semi-controlled. Then you can get it to touch down relatively softly, recover the equipment, and try to figure out exactly what this is, he told the Epoch Times. He continues on by saying the trick is that it has to be big enough to get the balloon to vent down and start dropping in altitude, but it has to be small enough that it's not just going to come tumbling down or tear a giant hole out, causing it to crash. This action, Thompson believes, would be in the United States' best interests, because once it gets out of your control, you know, we're never going to know exactly what it was used for. Yeah, so anyway, apparently the balloon itself was about the size of 3 school buses. Reportedly, according to the Associated Press, citing, of course, anonymous officials. And I guess Defense Department spokesman Brigadier General Pat Ryder said the balloon has a large payload underneath the surveillance component. And it could stay in the United States for several more days as it moves eastward. Well, we already know that apparently wasn't the case. Even though the pictures that are being given, like the one shown here in the report, was apparently on February 1st. So again, you know, this thing, first of all, again, just ask the question, the very first thing that I want to bring up is the fact that they were tracking it from the minute that it actually hit what would be considered U.S. airspace in the Aleutian Islands. They knew about it, going across the ocean prior to entering into Canadian airspace and then ultimately into American airspace. And so, yeah, it was just, I don't know. I don't understand how they didn't know and didn't realize what this thing was. They probably knew about it. Again, they reportedly knew about it several days prior to its discovery by the public. But whatever. I'm so done with the Biden lying. I really am. You know, Biden just trying to cover his butt over all of this stuff. There is absolutely nothing out there that would surprise me any in terms of this whole thing. All right. Enough about the damn balloon. If you get a chance, go and check out some of the memes that have been running around. They've been doing some really interesting stuff with the damn balloon. But enough about him. Whatever. I mean, it could be her. I don't know. Shit, you can pick your gender. Why can't the balloon? All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about is, you know, we've had the House for a little while now, January 20th, and there's been a lot of stuff that has been going on in the House of Representatives. And so I thought I'd take a second for us to just take a breather and try and see, you know, are we actually getting what we expected as conservatives in terms of this? Okay. And so, yeah. So, I found this article in the Washington Examiner. Let me go ahead and bring it up. And this one here is, here's what the House Republicans have accomplished in 1 month after taking the majority. And so, one of the first things that they have done is they have passed a bill establishing the Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. What have they done? Also, they have passed the Family and Small Business Taxpayer Protection Act. They have passed the Expressing the Sense of Congress condemning the recent attacks on pro-life facilities, groups, and churches. Okay. What else have they done? They've passed the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And yes, Music Man, you guys are. I try to keep it into the chat just to respond to you. I try to keep an eye on the chat, but sometimes it's difficult to do both. I can tell you. All right. And then let's see, we have they passed the Protecting America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve from China Act. Now, the interesting thing about that is it's not just the House that's actually looking at this. Okay. It is also, and I saw this in the Post Millennial as a aside to that particular thing. Ted Cruz, Joe Manchin have launched a bill to stop Biden from selling more of our U.S. oil reserves to China. And the quote is that the reserve is above all meant to help the United States and our allies through difficult times, not to help China power its economy. So the thing about this is that now this particular bill, so keep in mind that everything that the House passes means literally nothing if the Senate doesn't also agree to it. Okay? Because the way that our bills work is you have a House resolution and a Senate resolution. And then what they do is they take that and they swap. And they send, so like the Senate, if the Senate creates something, it sends it to the House. Then the House, it gets a chance to pick at it, change it, deny it, whatever. If it passes the House, then it goes, and it's been changed, okay, then it goes back to the originating, the Senate, and the Senate will approve the changes or disapprove the changes. If they approve the changes as it stands, then that bill becomes a bill, an actual bill, and it goes to the president's desk in order to be signed or vetoed. Now, if on the off chance that the president vetoes it, the Congress, if they have what's considered a veto-proof majority, meaning that one party has a substantial control of both houses, then what you can do is you can override the president's veto. Okay, but we don't have that right now. All right. So what's kind of going on here is, although the House is making a whole bunch of great strides in terms of all this, the chances of things actually passing the Senate, where we don't have as big of a margin, in fact, we have no margin at all, and things like that, it's difficult for bills to actually get passed. So that's why this particular one caught my eye, because of the fact that the Senate, both a Republican and a Democrat, even though Joe Manchin is sort of a moderate Democrat, he's still a Democrat. And so we have Ted Cruz and Joe Manchin working together on a bill to do basically the exact same thing as the House bill, which is protecting our strategic petroleum reserves, called the SPRs, from being sold to other countries when it's supposed to be used, and it was originally designed for and built for keeping us in essentially oil if we ended up going to war and there was embargoes, because that's when it was created. It was created in the 70s after we had the embargoes, had some issues and stuff. So that's kind of what caught my eye. Oh boy, I got a sneeze coming. Hold on. I'm not supposed to sneeze on the air. So there we go. All right. So that was one of the things that I saw that I was like, wow, okay. So this may actually have an opportunity to potentially pass. So some other things is the House passed the Strategic Production Response Act, which essentially seeks to limit the president's ability to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So the first one was to prevent us from selling it to China. This one in particular prevents the president from releasing it, which is cool for that. And apparently they have some other bills that are awaiting action. I won't go through every one, but one of the best things that happened, Eric Swalwell, Adam Schiff, and now Ilhan Omar are off of committees. This is probably one of the bigger things that I think, and look, I laugh about it and everything else. And I all I gotta say is that these people, what the hell did they expect? I mean, seriously. They kicked off MTG. They kicked off a couple other people. They kicked them off of their committees. Folks, this is where you have to consider what you're doing, whether it's going to open up a Pandora's box and create more things. It's just like getting rid of the filibuster. The whole idea of getting rid of the filibuster was a stupid idea. It was going to open up a potential of a whole host of problems, a Pandora's box of issues. That's exactly what they did when they took out the whole thing about getting judges confirmed during a lame duck president. The Democrats changed that rule thinking that we're just going to make it this way. And McConnell, believe it or not, blocked Garland from being nominated to the Supreme Court using the rule that the Dems put in place. I mean, I don't understand these people. I just don't get why. Well, no, I take that back. These people are complete, they're morons. They don't think more than one step in front of them. They don't sit there and think, okay, let's make this change. All right, and then what? This is what Dan Bongino always says. They never think of the and then what. They never think beyond what their first move actually is. They're not very good chess players. I'm going to tell you that right now. They definitely do not think past. They don't think past their first initial desired move. And it's bit them in the ass. And pardon my French, but it's bit them. And here is the amazingly, the mainstream media has now had to at least admit the honest truth. So here, this came from The Blaze, but it's an MSNBC host who basically admitted the inconvenient truth about Ilhan Omar being removed from the committee is that the Democrats are the ones that started it. It's like, you dumbasses. You think you've got the power now and you think you're going to hold on to it, but you never, ever do. So why stab yourselves in the foot with all of these changes? I'm telling the Republicans right now, don't make any big sudden rule changes. I mean, frick, the Democrats did that with the whole Pelosi thing. And now the Republicans are in charge of the House. And guess what? Now the Republicans are going to force bills and things like that to actually get sent through the real process like they should be. And these people, I swear, these Dems are these liberal leftist lunatic idiots are seriously not thinking ahead. They never do. So now, obviously you saw like Swalwell and all of these, these three people, they got on a panel, they got in front of CNN here this past week, and they started talking about, oh, woe is me, I never should have gotten it. Hello, Swalwell, you banged a suspected Chinese spy. You cheated on your wife, and you banged a foreign agent. Who the hell, and what makes you even think that you deserve to sit on the Intelligence Committee after that? I mean, seriously, folks, who in the hell? I mean, my gosh, if I had a secret clearance, I had one at one time. If I had that and I did something like that, my ass would get thrown out almost immediately, folks. It would have been gone. My ass would have been in trouble. I would have been in front of I would have been in front of a UCMJ court. I would have been in all kinds of trouble. Swalwell gets to go out and trot and parade and say, oh, no, I didn't, compromise national security at all. I just had an illicit affair relationship with a suspected Chinese spy by the name of Fang Fang. But you know what? It was purely physical, folks. That was all it was. What a moron. I'm sorry. He is a complete moron if he thinks he's able to get away with it. And you have Adam Schiff, who was he was leaking like a damn sieve when it came to the Trump things. And he kept promising, oh, I've seen the intelligence. I've seen it. There is evidence there. There's no evidence. There never has been. There never was. He was trying to elevate his status. And now he wants to run for Senate. Which, in California, yeah. It's not going to, oh my God. I can't even, I can't even believe the moronic thoughts of these people. And then you have Ilhan Omar, who has consistently sided with Palestinian and Hezbollah, Palestinian terrorists, Hezbollah. She has made anti-Semitic statements on the floor in front of everybody. And she's sitting here claiming, oh, I didn't know because I don't know English that well. It's like, really? I mean, oh my God, I cannot believe you people. You people are so, they just frustrate me. Okay. So guess what, guys? Reap what you sow. All right. And now that this has happened, the Democrats are actually supposedly starting to express a little regret for making those jumps that they did. Okay. So yeah, I just don't understand where these people get off. I mean, she's a Somalian refugee who supposedly, allegedly married her brother to get here into the United States. That still hasn't even been investigated yet, as far as I'm aware. It's kind of like the whole Obama birth certificate thing. Oh, no, we don't need to produce his birth certificate. Hawaii just says, yep, we got it. It's good. And everybody's supposed to accept that. Yeah. Anyway. All right. I get so frustrated with this. I just do. Oh my God. Freaking A. And yes, buddy, I did say ass. Okay. I said ass. God. And then of course you have the entire squad, which by the way, they are all admitted either communists or socialists. And we're supposed to expect that they have they have the interests of America best at their heart. I mean, how do these people be able to swear the oath of office for these offices, knowing that they're not going to uphold the Constitution of the United States? I mean, seriously, I'm telling you, if you cannot pass and you should be thrown out if you cannot uphold your oath of office, which essentially states that you need to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If you cannot do that, you should be kicked out of freaking office. I'm telling you. You should be. Oh, and of course, we've got our wonderful liar, serial liar in chief. Let me explain to you what this guy does. He gets on Twitter. Okay, we're going to jump topics here. But he gets on Twitter and he gets on social media. And what does he do? He wants to talk about the economy. He wants to talk about the strong jobs report. And completely freaking forgets about the inflation rate that we are at right now. Now, here's the thing. These jackasses, literally, because that's their symbol, these jackasses seem to believe that just because we have strong jobs, meaning that we have a lot of people who are going back to work now, that it erases everything else. It erases the idea that we're still running at about a 5% inflation when before this basement dummy took freaking office, okay, before he took office, we were running at below 2%. We were like 1.8, I think, something like that. Even it could be even less, could be a 1.2. That our gas was under $2 a gallon. Right now it's running right around 4, but it's going up again. These people really and truly seriously think that they can stand in front of a camera and say, oh, gas prices are going down, inflation's going down. Hey, jackasses, you donkey butts. Yes, it is going down, but it's still higher than when you took office. What the hell, folks? Where do you get off on the idea that things are better? They may be getting better than what they were, but they're not better. They're not better. Okay. And even after looking at the jobs report, okay, he's totally glossing over the fact that the price of gasoline has dropped down about $1.50 from its peak around $5 in June of 2022. The fact that according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the BLS, that the real average real average hourly earnings, inflation adjusted, has actually fell 1.1% back in December. When you add that to the almost 0.1% drop in the average work week, real average weekly earnings have tumbled 2%. Okay. We have a GDP growth rate that is like 3. I am so freaking frustrated with this. Eggs are high. Take a look at this. Redford said he paid $6.28 for a dozen of eggs. $6.28. I just cannot believe where these people can get this idea that our economy is actually doing better just because of a jobs report. Okay. We're still getting hit. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you only get like around a 4 or 5% increase in your paycheck, let's say you go in for a raise and you only get 4 or 5% over what you are, you're barely breaking even over what you were making. Okay. Over inflation. And when inflation was at 7% year over year, that was a big problem. That was a big problem. Outlaw Dogs says, I saw gas for $5.29 today. And reportedly it's going up. So where Biden thinks that he can take this freaking victory lap, he does this all the damn time. He thinks he is taking a victory lap and he is thinking that everything is okay. Everything is okay because we have more jobs. We have more this, we have more that. And he also, if you listen to the way that he compares about things, he also says, well, compared to when I took over, we have a higher whatever. Well, yeah, no kidding. You freaking basement dummy. Of course it's going to be that way. We were coming out of a literal freeze, a manufactured freeze of our economy due to COVID when you took over. You cannot compare any of these numbers today to what was before, because of the fact that we do not have anything else to compare it to. We have no baseline, people. We went into a manufactured stoppage of our economy. What a ridiculous. Yeah. Now, on top of all of these numbers, okay, and when we talk about the economy, what he talks about is expanding jobs and everything else. Well, what he doesn't talk about is things like this. U.S. layoffs reach a 2-year high as big tech cut thousands of jobs in January. And we're talking about Google cutting jobs, Microsoft cutting jobs. They were all cutting jobs in the big tech area. Okay. So yeah, we've got more layoffs that are coming. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Amazon cut something like 17,000 jobs too. Again, I don't know where this guy is coming up with this idea that he can take these victory laps. Really, seriously. I just don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's not just tech jobs, big tech jobs that are being cut. Clorox, manufacturer of disinfecting wipes and bleach and so on and so forth. Clorox exec says there's going to be no more price hikes. Layoffs are coming as it tries to bring an annual profit back. I mean, okay, look, excessive profit on the part of a company is unethical, but it is not in any way, shape, or form illegal. Okay. Eventually, what is supposed to happen is the fact that the capitalist system and the free market economy is supposed to level things out. As Clorox gets and its products get too high in terms of prices because they might be doing price gouging, you start going to other potential products. You start going to others. The market tends to set itself and reset itself in terms of what a particular product can be priced at. Okay. This is just simple economics 101. If I price myself out of the market, I'm not going to sell anything. If I don't sell anything, I don't make that profit. So this whole idea of price gouging is, while it is possible, it's not likely, because while some companies want to make more money on a particular product, what they generally try to do is they generally try to cut back on costs in order to enhance that profit. That's typically how things go. Okay. So it's not just the tech sectors that are being hit with this. It's also also Clorox execs and things like that. But hey, you know what? We're not done yet. I'm not done yet. I've got one more place to go when it comes to the execs, or it comes to the economy. Sorry, I said exec economy. This came from Yahoo Finance. And apparently the Fed is still looking at hiking the interest rate, the policy rate, above 5%, even though jobs are surging, supposedly. So, here it is. Interest is going up, which means that loans are going to cost more. You'll start to see things like the housing market. Real estate is starting to slow down. I've seen things in articles saying that real estate and new mortgage lenders are having a hard time finding people who want new mortgages. And I can tell you, as a person who locked in a pretty damn good rate, I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon under Biden's economy. It's just not going to happen. So, at least as far as I can help it. And now the Fed is going to try and inch things up some more in order to, try and stem inflation. Now, this is reminiscent of the 80s, realistically, was that we were constantly raising rates to try and stem the flow of inflation. And basically what that means is they're trying to dry up the money supply. There's so much money running around right now that the dollar itself is not actually worth $1. So, it takes more dollars in order to buy the same amount of goods as what it did 5, even 10 years ago. That's what inflation actually means. And so these people just don't have it. They just don't have it. And I don't know where Joe can come up with this idea that the economy is going really good. Because it's not. It's not. All right. I have a couple other, I have a couple other articles that I'm just not going to get to, which is fine. You can look at them. They're in the show notes, so on and so forth. Yeah, this is just, I just can't figure out why people think that this guy is actually any good for us. Really don't. All right. So tonight is Saturday and we have questions for whiskey. And tonight's question for whiskey, it's actually more than just one question for whiskey. It's actually triple. I got a three-peat here, all in one, but they all kind of are about the same. And this comes in from Dawn over on Rumble. And Dawn writes, Whiskey, we have heard a lot about our military equipment going pretty much everywhere. What are we doing to replenish it for our own country? Can you explain in detail? What are we capable of doing in case of an attack on U.S. soil? And will Israel survive? Do we have the same capabilities to intercept bombs? I think what she's talking about is the, what do they call that? The Iron Cross or something like that. Anyway. And then what can we do in case of a sea attack, against a sea attack? And then she says, thanks, Dawn. P.S. Love your show. Well, thank you. I love my show, too. All right. Okay. Well, as T. Brooks pointed out, we apparently can't seem to shoot, or we can at least seem to shoot down a balloon after it's already crossed our country. No, sorry, I digress. Just happened to show up. It's called the Iron Dome. Sorry. The Iron Dome for Israel. All right, let's take this one by one. All right. Yes, our military equipment seems to be going places that it probably shouldn't be. One of those places, of course, is Ukraine. Now, the thing about Ukraine and the military equipment that's going over there, that's actually, according to some reports that I'm hearing, that's actually things that are no longer used on a regular basis. They're older versions of our current equipment. So it's stuff that is, while technologically advanced and much more advanced than things that Russia might be able to be using, and so on and so forth, because the American military is the most technologically advanced fighting force in the world. Okay. And we have stuff that we left in Afghanistan, which again, according to reports, most of it was spares, things that didn't quite work, so on and so forth. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, we have a crap ton of equipment that we have been selling across the globe. Many countries that are around are actually using a lot of our leftover stuff, stuff that we no longer use, that we mothballed. Things like, for an example, the F4s are still in use in some countries over in the Middle East. We have things like F-16s, which are ending their end of their life, F-14 Tomcats, which have ended life in our service in relevation for to make room for the F-18. So the reality of it is that we haven't given away any of our top level stuff, like the F-22 Raptor, as an example. There's no other country that has the F-22 that I'm aware of. Now, that being said, what are we doing to replenish things for our own country? Well, typically the way that it goes is that you have to go to Congress, you have to get funding, military funding for it. And the one thing that I actually would be more concerned about, not so much the equipment, as the armaments that go to that equipment, the ammunition. Okay? And so things like, stuff that we're trying to eliminate, a lot of our current supply that we do use for practice. There are live fire ranges and things like that that we have available. Okay, and we do use it. But the thing about it is, though, is that the money and everything is going to have to come from Congress. That's all part of our military finances. Now, whether or not the stuff is being built right now, I haven't heard or seen anything. I'm just going to be honest. I haven't heard or seen anything, although I would imagine that somebody somewhere is thinking about replenishment. That being said, replenishment happens over a long period of time because we haven't ramped up like we did in World War II. In World War II, part of the reason why we were able to get so much built in such a short period of time is that our entire manufacturing that we had on our soil, our entire manufacturing was turned over from manufacturing commercial goods and services over to manufacturing military gear and equipment. If you recall in history, in your history class, car manufacturers changed over to manufacturing tanks. In fact, the American Legion that is real close to where I live, that was actually used to be a mattress factory that was created during World War II. And it's a small building. So we as America haven't kicked in all of our abilities yet. And so therefore it is, it honestly is going to have some issues in terms of replenishment. But I would imagine that we probably have it. It's just not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna happen over a longer period of time, unless we can get ourselves into gear like we did in World War II, which, God forbid, that actually ever happens, because that would mean that we are actually in military conflict. Although, like I pointed out in one of my past episodes, that there are some suggestions that we wouldn't be able to last against a long-term conflict with China in terms of our stuff that we do. Okay. Now, in terms of what are we capable of doing in case of an attack on U.S. soil? Well, the United States is actually uniquely set up in the fact that just by our sheer geography, we can cause some problems with invading countries. For an example, we have two very large oceans that realistically would take a lot of time and energy and effort from other countries to cross in order to get to our shores. The opportunities that they would have in order to mask their movements with all of our sensors and everything else, that would be kind of difficult. The other advantage that we have is that we are landlocked by, in the north and south, by two friendly countries. I won't say that they're necessarily our allies, but they are definitely friendly countries. We have Mexico to our south, and of course Canada to our north. So the reality of it is that it would take a lot, I think, for a organization, for another country, to actually come to us and be able to attack us on our own soil without us knowing that they were coming. However, that being said, we also have several key factors within our own geography, within our country, within our borders that cause issues. For an example, we have on the west side of the country, we have a lot of mountainous areas. And so it is going to be fairly difficult, whether it's the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas on the Pacific coast, up to the mountain range of the Continental Divide in Colorado and so on and so forth. It's going to be difficult, again, to try and traverse those systems. Not to mention the fact that we also have a very large interstate highway system to where we can get and move things at a fairly rapid pace from one side of the country to the other in order to get in. Now, the other thing is that the majority, believe it or not, the majority of our populace is actually on the east side of the Mississippi River. The West, ironically, only holds about 30% of our population, roughly 28% of our population. The middle of the country is actually fairly wide open and desolate due to its natural geography. So if another country were to attack us, they would have a difficult time trying to completely eliminate us. That would give us time to be able to rebuild and stand back up with regards to it. The other thing, too, is the fact that we, as a country, have the most armament in our civilian population, as Buddy just pointed out. And this was one of the key things that Japan actually had a problem with when it came to trying to attack the west coast of the United States. And I think it's Admiral Yamamoto was quoted as saying there would be a rifle behind every bush. And this is true. In fact, there's been statistical analysis done, and the number of hunting licenses that have been pulled from the state of Wisconsin would rival that of many, many countries on this globe. Okay, so the realistic scenario that we have here is the fact that it would be fairly difficult for somebody to attack us on our soil. Okay, now what can we do against a sea attack? Well, one of the things that I can tell you is that we have several sensors, the sonar buoys and things like that. You've probably heard them talked about in multiple locations, but we have several sensors that are placed out in our oceans to try and protect our shores from a lot of other dangers. So again, we're the most technologically advanced country. I wouldn't necessarily say that is 100% foolproof, because it's not. However, it does give us a fairly large advantage when going up against countries that are not quite as technologically advanced as ours. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, well, Israel does have a bit of a problem. They are essentially landlocked in most cases, with just about every country that is surrounding them wants to get rid of them. But they honestly have been in that space for many, many years. They've been fighting against others for many, many, many years. And they actually, in consideration to the rest of the world, are probably one of the most trained in terms of fighting with their military than just about anybody, because of the fact that our military, or their military, I should say, is consistently tested. And so because of that, they are, and because of the fact that they are consistently on alert, they have a lot more training under their belts, realistically, than most other countries in the world that don't have that kind of scenario or situation. Plus, they also have technology that we've been able to help them out with, called the Iron Dome in particular. The Iron Dome, if you've ever watched it, when an Iraqi Scud missile or whatever has been launched their way, or an Iranian Scud missile, whichever one it is, whenever you watch that and you see that thing, technology-wise, they are very sophisticated in terms of their defense mechanisms. And so I would say they would probably fare fairly well. And they likely will also take care of several challenges that are within that area from other countries that are not quite so technologically advanced. Now, whether or not they would survive, it all depends a lot upon who gets a nuclear weapon, who's closest to them. And as of right now, they do have treaties, thanks to Donald Trump, with regards to several of the countries that are around them. And so it's very possible, maybe even so much as to say likely, that that their allies might help them out in some sort of a all-out conflict in that area. That being said, though, we are their biggest advocate. We are their biggest ally and their biggest friend. And so if we were to have a problem to where we couldn't help them out, that would be a huge detriment, I think, in their situation. So, you know, the question as to whether or not we have the same capabilities to intercept bombs, I'm not going to necessarily comment on that because of the fact that I really don't know. I really have no idea. But the fact of the matter is that I wouldn't be surprised if we do have something that just has never been talked about. I mean, Reagan there was a lot of people that were arguing about Reagan with his whole Star Wars program. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of stuff that I would say that we probably have that nobody knows about, or if they do, they definitely are keeping their damn mouth shut about it. And it's not, but at the same time, though, we just had a balloon from China across our entire United States. So who the hell knows? Seriously. Who the hell knows? But as I will end it with this, okay? I will end it with this. And that is simply that if you look at conflicts with larger organizations, larger countries across the globe throughout history, if you look at places like Korea, Vietnam, in terms of Afghanistan, in terms of smaller forces going up against much larger opponents, traditionally, yes, the larger opponents do have the bigger firepower, but just look at Afghanistan against Russia. They spent 10, 15 years in war, and Russia couldn't defeat them. We just pulled out from Afghanistan, and we were over there for 20 years. Still couldn't finish them off. And the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong in Vietnam, they caused us all kinds of problems. Korea, we had all kinds of issues. When it comes down to things like guerrilla warfare, I do not agree with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is an idiot if he thinks, well, if you just have an AR-15, an AR-15 can't take down an F-16. Yeah. Take a look at history, Joe. There have been a lot of small forces that were extremely under weaponized, under equipped, that have defeated much larger, more well-equipped enemies. So I have a feeling that if something were to happen here on the U.S. soil, it would be a lot like that. The American civilian population, it would turn into guerrilla warfare, and that would be the problem for the invading forces. Plus, you absolutely cannot discount the resolve of the home team when it's happening on their land. Okay? All right. So, thank you, by the way. Thank you, Dawn, for those questions. It was very insightful questions. Unfortunately, I couldn't answer all of them, but that was wonderful. Thank you for submitting that. If you want to submit a question for Whiskey, please feel free to do so at fans, F-A-N-S, at whiskeymusings.online. That's fans at whiskeymusings.online. And yeah, you can get your question in for questions for Whiskey. Right now, I have nothing in the queue, so if you put one in over the course of the next week, I guarantee you it will show up next Saturday. I have at least one or two, maybe three Pet of the Weeks, so you can submit your Pet of the Week to the same email, and that happens on Wednesday night. All right. That is going to be my final Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Do me a favor, if you like the program, if you like what I do, please head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account, and subscribe. I'm looking for 10K by the end of 2023. It's a big hurdle, but I can get there. I think you can help me to get there too. And we'll see you next time, which will be Wednesday night, right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.